Alright, so I decided to redo my review because it just did not it was really bad. I wasn't like bashing the episode, it was just like I felt really, really dead. So I'm not even gonna talk about the Furuta stuff in this episode because the way how they're doing Furuta and the fact that Furuta is supposed to represent the foil to Kaneki, and they're not really giving the Furuta the spotlight that he needs in the like they're doing the trollish stuff good, which is fine. And the voice actor I think is doing a good job, but they're not portraying Furuta's relationship with Kaneki at all in the anime version, which I think is really weird because if they wait until the very end, it's just gonna feel really weird because there's no build up to them fighting, whereas in the manga it's like a gradual build up because Furuta and Kaneki are literally two sides of the same exact point. So yeah, now I know that was like a really weird way to start off my review, but the Furuta stuff in this episode, well, the CCG stuff in particular, I guess, that not necessarily the Furuta stuff, was not good. Everything that had nothing to do with the Quinks was just bad, in my opinion. In terms of pacing, it was way too fast. There wasn't really a room for you even to like, or there wasn't room for you to even really breathe and to just grasp the entire situation because things were just like boom, 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 boom. It's all happening at once. So I'm not even going to talk about that. We're just going to get into the Quink stuff because I feel like that's by far the strongest part of the episode and the part that I enjoyed the most. Now, I do have a few nitpicks, and it's not necessarily of it being super accurate to the manga. It's just like, this would have been better from a more story point of view, and this is a nitpick that I've had with the entire season, and it has to do with the art style. I do not like the way how Kaganes look in this episode, or in the Tokyo Ghoul seasons. And it's not necessarily on the line of everybody, because some characters or Kaganes look fine. Like, I feel like with Urie, it doesn't look too bad, and with Kaneki, I feel like it looks alright, because his Kagane kind of looks relatively the same as it always has. Saiko, okay, the Saiko versus Urie scene looked good from an animation standpoint. It was fluid, it was fast, and it was very comical and funny, just like how it was in the manga. And in some ways, Saiko almost reminded me of Jotaro. Like, there's this one scene where Saiko like points at Urie, and she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna finish you off. Like, you can't do anything, Baka, blah blah blah." And then she's like, "Saiko, cancel." And it's just like a really cool scene, and I thought that was done really well. But her Kagane, like when she does like the Buddha hand thing, it looks really metallic. It kind of reminded me of like robotic hands, which was really weird because Kaganes are always, you know, compared to like liquid muscles. So you'd think that they would look more on the lines of kind of like how Kaneki's Kagane did in season 1, but it doesn't really look like that here. So that's just more of a minor nitpick, and it doesn't really take anything that much away from the scene, and I'm going to mark off points from this episode from that, because it's a minor thing. And even in terms of the design, they also changed Donato's. Like, Donato's Kagane kind of looks a little bit like a maggot, whereas in the manga, it has like a bunch of crosses on it because he's known as the priest. So I'm not even going to really take that away from the episode. It was just like, whatever. Same thing with the whole censorship of them not showing the glass cutting Urie's neck when Donato drags him across the windows. But anyways, going back to what I was saying before. All right, so the Quink stuff in this episode I thought was interesting because the way how they're going about it is very different to the way how it was in the manga. Now, the way how Urie feels towards Heise for the most part is somewhat the same, but it seems like the route that they're going here is as if that he hates, like, I'm kind of taking it on the lines of he hates Heise so much because of the fact that it reminds him of himself. And I'm not really sure. And he also kind of looks at Heise or Kaneki as the foil that ended up causing the whole entire family to split apart and break. And you even kind of see this further with the way how Mutsuki is talking about Heise and the fact that she's kind of blaming him for not being there to save him, whatever. Whatever you want to call Mutsuki's gender, because we don't really know what Mutsuki identify as of right now. Because like she says like that whole line like I'm so disgusting like female, And then, but you also have where prior Mutsuki identified as a male. So I'm not really sure. Like, whatever you want to call Mutsuki is fine. I don't really care. But all right. So the Mutsuki stuff, they skipped a big portion of her backstory, and I made a video about that. So link to that will be in the description down below or the comic section. Look either or. So if you guys are confused what exactly happened there and why they skipped it, I think it's just more on the lines of censorship reasons. Because obviously Mutsuki killed Torso. Like, we see that in the anime version, but you don't really get to see the full details and why exactly her hair is white. She did get tortured, and I would even argue and say that her torture is probably worse than what Kaneki got. I don't think it was nearly as long. I'm pretty sure she was only tortured for like a few days at most, whereas Kaneki was like 6 days or something like that. But I feel like due to the scale and the brutality of it from a psychological... Actually, no, I think Kaneki's torture is probably worse. But like Mutsuki's torture is still pretty bad. But anyways, I'm just trying to like remember everything that they showed in this episode because a lot of things were different. There's this one scene where you see Mutsuki like sitting, like recovering, I guess, sitting on her bed, and she's just like repeating teacher, 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 like sensei, yada, yada, yada. And you have where Mutsuki, or Urie, like shows up and drops flowers inside of a trash can when he sees her like that. And Saiko's kind of like, oh, like, how's Muchan? And Urie is just like, bruh, she's gone. She's not coming back. And it's just kind of a really sad scene, especially looking at the way how Mutsuki's working with Furuta at the very end of this episode. It's just very heartbreaking seeing someone as, you know, kind-hearted as someone like Mutsuki end up being forced into a situation like this. But it seems like the anime version, though, what they're trying to do with the Urie Mutsuki stuff kind of comes across as a lot more romantic than it was in the manga. Where in the manga version, it was kind of implied that Urie might have feelings for Mutsuki in that type of way, but it was never really outwardly stated. It's not outwardly stated here, but it's implied way more than the manga version was. I'm just trying to think, like, what else did we get? Okay, so them not showing Higemaru with Urie during the Donato fight, I felt like was not good because they haven't really developed any of the Quinks members at all. In fact, I don't even think they've really named them off. Obviously, you have where the girl with the freaking splendid body is Xiao, and then you have where okay, Ora is the guy who has the long hair that looks like the protagonist from Mankitsu Happening. That's Ora. And the woman who's actually laying in front of him is Kyoko Ora, who happens to be a special class investigator who fought against Toka, Yomo, Ayato, and Hinami in the prison alongside Mogen. Kaneki was actually the one who took her out, if you guys remember from the previous episode. He's her nephew. And you have where Higemaru is the pink-haired guy who happens to have a crush on Saiko and wants to be her senpai? Or not senpai, her kohai, I think. If I'm not mistaken. It was like a weird relationship between the two of them. But he's supposed to be like comedic relief. But besides that, he has a moment, not in this episode, but in the manga version, that like it's development between him and his family, and how his uncle, I believe it was like a firefighter or something, and he goes along with Urie. And what makes the scene of Urie becoming or framing out, which essentially is just them capable of utilizing the full capabilities of their Kagune. It's not a Kakuja, even though the messed up aspect of it and where they lose control is very similar to that. You have where pretty much like Urie, when he goes into it in the manga version, Donato is actually like killing and torturing Hige, and you have where Urie kind of snaps into it due to his desperation of wanting to save him, because you have where Donato's like ripping off like Hige's like body parts, like his arms and stuff like that, and he's screaming. So it was like Urie was kind of like on a clicking or was kind of on a timer in that situation where he didn't really have that much time to like deal with the whole entire situation at hand, and that's what caused him to really like go into it. It was out of desperation, very similar to what happened with Shirazu. Whereas in the anime version, that sense of danger isn't really there, because you're just kind of like, okay, Donato's beating the crap out of Urie, and you know that Urie somehow is going to make it out, because you see in the very beginning of the season, he's staring up at Dragon alongside several other people like Toka and Mutsuki, etc. So you know that he's gonna live. You're just kind of like, okay, like, how is he gonna get out of this? And I feel like the main problem that I have with this anime season, aside from like them cutting so much stuff out, where to the point where I feel like anime onlys have to go out of their way to figure out stuff in order for it to make sense, is the fact that I feel like a lot of these characters in the anime versions, in comparison to their manga counterparts, are not nearly as interesting. Because Urie is debatably the best developed character in Tokyo Ghoul Re, the manga version. Either him or Takizawa, not counting Kaneki. Like, him, Takizawa, or Kaneki are probably like the 3 best developed characters in TG Re. And you have where in the anime version, they cut out so much of his development where, and even his relationship with the other Quinks members, aside from like Saiko and Mutsuki, that a lot of the stuff that happens with him either just doesn't feel natural or just does not hit for me. And it's unfortunate they shit on a character arc like Urie's, as well as Takizawa's. So yeah, besides that, I'm not a huge fan of this episode. I don't think it's the worst episode of this season, but it's definitely not one of the stronger ones. It's definitely a not as good as last week's episode, in my personal opinion. I think next week might be a lot better due to the fact of it focusing mainly on Kaneki and Toka's relationship. So that should be good, since they're only focusing on one thing. And, okay, one thing that also kind of annoyed me about this episode, and they show this at the end, like after the credits, they show Amon and Akira, like the kiss scene, alright? Like, they don't show their faces, but you can tell that's like Amon's shoes, and you can tell that's Akira's shoes. Did they cut out the entire Amon Akira conversation, or is that going to be shown next week? Because if they cut that out completely, bad studio period. Like, you deserve to get hit by a stick, all right? Like, don't do that. But anyways, that's kind of all for this review. This wasn't one of my favorite episodes. It was not that great. So anyways, thanks for watching. Remember, comment, subscribe as always. Just comment down below your thoughts. I'm just hoping next week's episode is a lot better. So anyways, see you guys.